So bullying and abuse, it can be cyberbullying. That doesn't touch the body and it still does extremely serious harm to the brain. People off the internet could use psychological bullying, verbal bullying, social relational. Social relational bullying is when you use the person's relationships to harm them. So you don't invite them to a party. You don't, and they should be there. You don't invite them to a meeting in the workplace, and they should be there. You use a smear campaign to ruin their reputation. You gossip behind their back and act like you're a friend in person. These are all social relational types of bullying, and they're very, very harmful. They can do physical damage to the brain. The physical damage can be seen on brain scans. And so I've said here at the top something that might be a little bit confusing. I said we punish physical abuse and bullying much more than we do social, relational, and emotional or psychological. But from a brain perspective, they're equivalent. And in fact, things like emotional neglect might be more harmful to the brain than physically harming someone. And part of our societal problem with this is, it's criminal to strike somebody. I mean, if you went to the workplace and punched someone in the face, that's instant criminal charges. If a teacher did it to a student, same thing. If a student even did it to another student, that's considered legally criminal, very serious. If it's emotional, if it's emotional neglect, if it's social relational, we don't get the same kind of legal response. And so we don't take it as seriously. And yet the science tells us we should be taking it as seriously. So one of the mistakes in our society is we have a tendency to talk about bullying as if it's a power imbalance. The child who's bullying has the power and they use the power to harm the target. This actually, from a brain point of view, is not true. Kids who bully others they don't have healthy brains and they're not neurotypical. In fact, what's typical is to have a really innately wired into your brain healthy empathy neural network. Empathy is the key. And just to quickly remind you, sometimes we mix up empathy and sympathy. So just to remind you, empathy is when you walk in someone else's shoes. It's when you look at the world from someone else's perspective, or you look at the world from their emotional standpoint or their history. And you start to see things differently because you're actually imagining what it would be like to be someone else. Well, babies at 40 minutes after birth are already starting to take a really good look at the powerful people in the world, in their world, like doctors and parents and caregivers. They are looking and they start to imitate very quickly adult powerful behaviors because babies and children all the way up until they launch are dependent on the powerful people in their world. So if we didn't have really, really high level, high functioning empathy as human beings, we might not survive. So when you have a child at school who's bullying, like their empathy neural network has already started to be damaged or eroded by whatever it is that's going on in their lives, then it's not neurotypical, it's not powerful, it's incredibly unhealthy, and it should be setting off alarm bells. And we should be teaching children this. We should say, when you see a child bullying, they are suffering. They are not powerful. You need to go get a teacher because that child needs help really badly. And I can't help but believe, and I do not have research to back this up, but I can't help believe that if we taught kids, those that feel the impulse to bully and those who are going to be targeted, if we taught them that this is really what's going on, I don't think it would make children feel comfortable to display to their peers that they really are suffering, that they have extreme insecurity, that there's something wrong with their brain. We might say they're mentally ill, they have a deficit. These are all very significant negatives. And if, not that we would ever want to speak that way to a child that's manifesting this behavior, but if we had, before school began and every single year, and we repeated and we taught and we made kids really understand that bullying is not powerful, it's a sad and desperate act, I think that it would change how kids handled it, how they took care of each other, how they went and sought help themselves if they felt the impulse to bully. I think it would change it. So there is not only an empathy issue that's shown, that you can see in the brain of a child that's bullying. You also are going to see dysregulated emotional regions in the brain. So, for example, if a healthy child, a healthy adult with a healthy brain was put into an fMRI machine. So fMRI just means it's video. You can see movement. It's not a still picture like an MRI. If you put them into that kind of a brain image machine, and you looked at what the activity is in their brain while you showed them a series of pictures. So let's say you show a series of very upsetting pictures. You show a dog being hit by a car, an elderly person being pushed, a child being ignored when they're crying. These kinds of upsetting, think emotional, think that somebody getting their hand pricked is a classic research technique that they use to see what happens in the brain of the observer. These are major studies that have been done. So if you had two people and you were pricking the hand of one person, the observer's brain would completely light up in the same neural networks that experience pain in the brain. And you're not getting your hand pricked at all. You're watching someone else get hurt. That's empathy. And our empathy neural networks are designed to make us pro-social, make us care about each other, create communities, collaborate, work together. This is how human beings survive. And our brains are very passionate about survival. So what happens to the brain of somebody who's very dysregulated? So we're concerned about behavior that they're manifesting. They might be like, when they study adults, you're talking narcissists and Machiavellians and psychopaths. You put them into the brain scanner, that fMRI, and you show them the same images: the dog being hit by the car, that old person being pushed, the child being ignored when they're crying. And you see that their empathy neural networks do not ignite. They don't light up. They don't get active. The emotional regions in the brain, they don't light up. They don't get activated. It's just extinguished. And that tells you right there, there's something very harmed, very hurt in their brains. They have major deficits. And this is why they don't have emotions. They don't feel guilty when they hurt people. They don't feel remorseful. They don't lie up at night, tossing and turning about what they've done. They just repeat the behavior the next day. Because when you put them in the brain scanner and show them those kinds of horrible images, what lights up in their brain is language and cognition. These are the types of neural networks that help you tell lies and cover up what you've done and lie even more because it's self-serving. So these are very concerning things. When we see children bullying, we should be profoundly worried and doing absolutely everything in our power to get their brains back to health and find out what is going on in their lives that are hurting their brains so significantly. So this is very, very general. And I know that there's a million different versions, and every single brain is unique, which is a fascinating thing. All of us have brains as unique as our fingerprints. So no one brain is the same. And every single brain has different histories and experiences and genetic background. So, I mean, I'm saying the most general things right now, but I do think it's relevant and I do think it's interesting because this is not how we talk in society. So we talk a lot about ADHD, and these children need support and they need accommodations and they need medication. We need understanding around them in order to help them fulfill their incredible potential. And that's just normal. We do not talk the same way about children who are manifesting incredibly aggressive, destructive behaviors like bullying. But perhaps we should, is what I want to just let us invite us to have this kind of a discussion and conversation.